Hello, I'm Bench JC from A Slice of Gaming, and I have just rolled credits on The Legend of Heroes Trails Through Daybreak. This will be a full spoiler review and will also include spoilers for all 10 past Trails titles. First, I'd like to start with my history with the Trails series. I started with Sky 1 back in December of 2022 and finished Reverie back in January of this year. For over a year, I went through this franchise, and it didn't take long for it to become my favorite franchise ever. I know there is a lot of controversy with some games, especially in the Erebonia arc, but I just love them all deeply. I don't think any of the Trails games are bad or have a bad story whatsoever. In simpler words, they are all true peak. Getting that out of the way, I'd like to say what my expectations were going into Daybreak. Coming off of Reverie and that being the first time Trails ever truly felt cinematic in its presentation, and Reverie becoming my favorite in the series so far, needless to say, that made my expectations for Daybreak really high, and I'm glad to say they were exceeded, and now Daybreak is my favorite game in the Trails series. First, I'd like to talk about combat. Trails has always had good combat, and honestly, I've never really thought about it all that much. It has good combat, nothing mind-blowing, but more than enough to get me from story point to story point. However, in Daybreak, that all changed. For once, I wasn't using turbo mode almost at all just to get to another story point, and I was enjoying the action and turn-based mode. They seamlessly weave the two together, and honestly, the turn-based mode is the best it's ever been. Tons of fun arts and crafts, and it just overall feels faster. Grendel fights at the end of each chapter were also a highlight. The Grendel is such a powerhouse and extremely fun to use. Overall, combat takes a huge leap forward in Daybreak, and I'm excited to see where it goes beyond this. Sound Team JDK always puts out banger soundtracks, and Daybreak is good. It just doesn't reach the heights of many of its predecessors. I have maybe 5 songs that I'll put in my Trails playlist from this game. However, I do think this game does have the best main menu theme and best just emotional themes. But any combat or dungeon themes, besides maybe 1 or 2, just don't have that much of an impact. Now I'd like to start on characters, starting with Van. Van is easily my favorite Trails protagonist. His personal story, along with his ideals, set the game apart from any other Trails game and most any other games. He is very much the focal point of the overarching plot as well, so I'll save most of my Van thoughts for later. Agnes is like most of the other Trails protagonists, light-hearted with a sense of justice, but her time with Van really helps her grow her own perspective on how she thinks the world should be in opposition to her father, the president of Calvard. Fairy, I think, is the weakest part of Arkwright Solutions, but I still think she's just fun to be around, and her relationship with her brother is something I really hope they expand more in the future. Aaron might be a personal favorite for me. I think he is hot-headed and thinks he's right, just like any other 19 or 20-year-old, and I also think the way Van takes him under his wing because he sees a lot of him and Aaron really helps Aaron grow and mature throughout the story. I also think a nice touch is that in the battle system, originally Aaron just calls people like Pipsqueak or Girl or whatever, but towards the end he really starts calling everyone by their names, and I think that's a really cool touch. Rosette is a character who comes with a lot of baggage of Marduk, a new player in the series who I have a lot of questions about. But we learn quickly that Rosette is also a cyborg or an AI or something that just is kind of like in service to Marduk as a whole, which is very interesting and I hope to learn more about. Quatre really ties together with Professor Hamilton and the other professors, but we still don't know that much about him from before then, except that he's a cult survivor like Reen and Van. Judith is just a ball of fun. The ongoing bit with her trying to hide her being Grimcat never gets old, and I always laugh at it. And her relationship with Arok, the almost 150-year-old person from Almada at the end, was really powerful and something different. Burgard is just a powerhouse who has to know a lot about Zemuria, and I want him to spill it all. Also, his relationship with Van is just great. Van talks to everyone as equals constantly throughout the game, but when it's his master, he immediately folds and shows a ton of respect for him, as well as other characters do, as he's a really prominent, thought-to-be-dead member of the Grouse Ritter. Daybreak also has countless side characters that I won't get into, but shoutouts to Shizuna, Dingo, Salute You Homie, Marielle, the Oathbreaker, also Fee, Elaine, Rune, Ren, and Walter, and Zen, and Leon, and Celise. Like, all these characters I just want to know more about because they all have just very interesting fundamental backgrounds. Trails always has some really good settings. Standout is Crossbell specifically, but I think Calvert is also really good. While it may be unfair because the technical leap with Daybreak and the new engine really does give it that advantage presentation wise, it really does help just breathe life into Calvert. I think overall, like we talked about earlier, graphics deserves a shout out. Trails has never been a graphical powerhouse, but that honestly changed with Daybreak. While it may not have the graphical heights of, say, Tales to Arise, Trails, starting with Reverie and now cemented in Daybreak, has really found its own style that just sets it apart. It just oozes style, and the game having really cinematic cutscenes just adds that emotional depth to the story, where you can really see it with the Nuke and Kryl. I feel it's fitting to start the story discussion with its conclusion. At the end of the game, you learn inadvertently Van was the catalyst for everything that's happened to this game. Every tragic event is because of something that happened to Van, something was taken from him. At his time being held by the DG cult, it is found out that Van has a diabolic core, which means he is part demon, something that I really hope we get more explanation on later in later games. Dantes, who was in the DG cult at the time, took this from Van when he was young and used its power to cause every tragic event as he rose to power in Almada. This in turn makes Van feel solely responsible and not want any help cleaning up what he believes is solely his mess. The not accepting help plotline and self-sacrifice plotline was done with Reen and Coldsteel, but I feel it's fundamentally different and refreshing with Van. Reen would give up anything for his friends, even his life, but Van truly thinks he isn't worthy to be alive, and that he's a burden, so he should throw his life away in service of the ones he cares about. This all comes to a head in the final chapter when we learn all of this, and what Van's been through, and how he thinks, and then the people of Arkride Solutions say, no, we don't want that, you can't go and sacrifice yourself. And then even throughout the final chapter, because Pandemonium is just everyone's bond with Van, that they all come to help him, and you truly see the depth of his bonds with people, and that he truly is cared about and is worth living. I would like to talk about Almada, the main antagonist group of the game, and honestly I think it's extremely impressive the extent to which they built Almada out within just one game, and that all comes to a head when they nuke a village, something I never thought would happen in a Trails game, just nuclear weapons, but it's done in a very interesting way and how it shifts the power balance, and when that happens, because it's so mind-blowing, every major organization from Zemuria comes to take Almada down, because even those, the evilest of evil, don't want this. The Church, Bracer Guild, Ouroboros, CID, Jaegers, they all think it's imperative that they take down Almada because they can't let a third party or even country holders to have this power because it's that bad. The very big twist that Dantes, the leader of Almada, has such a big connection to Van with the cult and being Calvardian royalty is very interesting, and how that he did have a warped need for power whenever he found out Van had the diabolic core. So that was interesting, and Van's apologizing to him actually was wild. Well, I didn't touch on nearly a lot of the story. I mean, I'm just really impressed overall. The themes, characters, throughout the 66 hours it took me to beat, none of it was a slog. It was paced very well. And I was so happy the entire time I was playing through Daybreak. I wanted to touch on some lingering questions I had that I hope get answered in future games. I'm just going to lift off a few questions. How did Van come into being, with him just being a reincarnation of a demon lord, and how that was apparently originally not one of the 72 demons and there's actually 77? What is Marin the Grindle? Because there's so many lost words being said by everyone that really is just, what does this all mean? And also, who is C, the person that warned us about the 7th Genesis? And what even are the Genesis? And where's the 8th one? What is Roy Gramhart's plans? The guy's obviously scheming, but to what end? Because he doesn't necessarily seem evil. And everything with Marduk, what's their goal? Van said he knew it, but I'm very curious about just what they're after, because they're a private military group who's obviously going to be needed, so it's just very interesting. Something that's not really a lingering question, more so that I hope happens, just more Van and Elaine interactions, because Van's left a lot unsaid to Elaine and Rune, and I really hope he sits down and does explain to him what stuff that even we don't know. Maybe why he left. Was it because he felt like a burden? There's so many other lingering plot threads throughout every single group, every character that I hope is expanded in Kuro 2 and then Kai no Kiseki. To wrap things up, Trails Through Daybreak left me speechless. Its character, story, setting, presentation, For the first game in an arc, and just for Falcom in general, it's groundbreakingly impressive. And honestly, like, I had no intention to come here and record a video after Daybreak, but I was just sat laying around after I finished this game, and I just know I had to project my thoughts sometime and somewhere, and I really wanted to get this out. So I will be thinking about this game for a long time, and I hope y'all will too, and hope you enjoyed it. See y'all for Daybreak 2, because I'm sure I'll have some piece of content out there for that early next year. Thank you for listening. Please check out our other stuff at A Slice of Gaming podcast. We have 100 Girlfriends content, a weekly gaming podcast, and other stuff always going on. Thanks for giving this a watch.